we go. Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Can I Kick It FC. I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr, and joining me is a man that collectively thought Afcon is probably the craziest tournament outside of CONCACAF. Nah, Afcon's crazier. Yeah.
Afcon is about survival. It's not about talent. It's not about tactics. It's survival.
It's truly, it truly is like CONCACAF. Like, and I think only people that have experienced CONCACAF will love Afcon.
Yeah, I feel like because the thing with CONCACAF is, other than the US and Mexico, it is kind of one of those where it's those two, but then you have this next level. And even then, you could see like a Jamaica or Canada, you could see them lose to a Trinidad and Tobago. Like, it wouldn't surprise anyone if Honduras gets a win. It wouldn't surprise anyone if Panama gets a win. Hell, you can even start dropping down. Maybe and World Cup qualifying, Haiti was close to knocking out Canada. Like, they were it was getting pretty slim getting into I don't know if it was the Gold Cup qualifying or CONCACAF, but there was a point where Haiti had Canada on the ropes. And even Olympic qualifying was kind of the same way. So it is one of those where once you start, and I think a lot of it is just because, unlike in Europe and South America and even Asia, the terrain and the environment is just so different than what most players are probably, or at least most of the top players are accustomed to.
No, yeah. So obviously, we're not going to do like a super in-depth breakdown of Afcon. There's way better podcasts that are dedicated to this. One of those podcasts, African Five Aside. I can't remember the guy who creates it, but I listen to it literally every day after Afcon, and it is amazing. It is like a 30-minute breakdown. But one of the things he said when he was doing the team preview was a lot of teams are going to try to bring in European players for the technical piece. But he said that the teams that are going to win are the teams that know how to grit and grind their way to results. And that's literally all that Afcon was. Like,
the tournament winner pretty much was the epitome of just get by until the final.
yeah. Like, if this is any other tournament, Ivory Coast doesn't even make it out of the group. We're talking about them getting shellacked on the last day of the group stage by, what was it, 4 goals to Equatorial Guinea? Yeah, I believe so. And
they lost 4-0 to Equatorial Guinea.
They get in because they're like one of the best third place teams, and then fire their coach in the middle of a tournament, something we have never seen before, and then go on this run to the final and win it.
And the thing with Ivory Coast was just more like, and even when he got to the knockouts, it was still them just getting by. Like, they barely got by Mali. Like, it took a 90th minute equalizer and then another goal in stoppage time. For like, that was in the round of 16. Then you get to the then you get to the quarterfinal. Once again, Mali was the quarterfinal. The round of 16 was Senegal on penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, they got an 86-minute penalty from Kessie. So it's just one of those where you get there and it's like, okay, they get by the round of 16 on penalties. They somehow miraculously get through in the quarterfinal. They get to the semifinal, play DR Congo, get a goal in the 65th minute. And it's just, again, scraping by, probably should have advanced. And then they get to the final and completely were dominating Nigeria.
Yeah. Now, and this is the thing that is crazy. Ivory Coast, the only reason why they got in over Ghana is because of a win. Like they had worse goal difference, all this like literally Ivory Coast got in because they won the first day.
Yep.
That's crazy. But the other thing about Afcon to show you how crazy this tournament was is like I think it was 3 out of the 4 teams that were third place team went on to make it to the quarterfinals. And of
Yeah,
course, like
because
Ivory Coast goes
others.
on to make it to the final win, but they beat Mali in the quarterfinals, and that game goes to extra time. Like it just show you, like, yo, it's really is just like gritting, grinding your way to a win and get it out there. Like
Well, I'll say
I
even
want
all
to,
the other matches were kind of the same way. Like there were a few of them where I mean, Angola did completely control against Namibia. I cannot say it right
yeah,
now. I'm struggling. But they had like Nigeria handled Cameroon, but all the other and like South Africa handled Morocco, but everything else like Cape Verde and Mauritania 1-0. Guinea, Equatorial Guinea 1-0. DR Congo, Egypt penalties. We mentioned Senegal and Ivory Coast, Mali, Burkina Faso 2-1. And it's just one, and even Cape Verde and South Africa in the quarterfinal in the worst penalty shootout you will ever see.
no, that
And
was not. It was
that was
not good.
bad.
That was not good. That was not good. That was not good, man. I mean,
When the
I think
penalty winner, when the penalty shootout is 1-2, it's
I
not
think
good.
there was like a sick part of me that was rooting like y'all want to get the goalkeeper PKs, but I wanted to be like 1-2. Like I wanted to be absolutely horrible. Like if we go be bad, be bad. Like
Cape
that's
Verde
what I
tried
wanted.
they held their end of the bargain.
They did. They did. Man, oh, all right. I feel like we can look at this AFCON through 2 premises. And I feel like a lot of people are looking to the premises of the big teams failed. But the premise that I'm kind of looking at is like, yo, like the smaller or not smaller, I should say, but lesser known countries thrived in this tournament. Like absolutely thrive. But let's start off with the big teams that failed. I think the one we should obviously start off with. Let's start. I know you're probably praying that his hamstring's okay, but Mo Salah in Egypt.
It, Egypt was weird because that group was just Cape Verde won 2 games and drew. Egypt drew all 3 of their games. And when you
Yeah,
look at the games they drew, they were all kind of the same thing where it's just, yeah, they did what they needed to. All of them were 2-2, which was weird. Like Mozambique, Ghana, and Cape Verde all were 2-2, but it was all different ways, whether it was kind of getting late goals. And I think the thing with Egypt was it's just Egypt is a team where they can either make a deep run like they did in 2022 for that tournament, or they just completely look like a shell of themselves. And I think a lot of it,
yeah,
and losing Mo Salah did not help. And had they, if he was healthy, maybe they would have gotten through the round of 16. But even then, it's like that's not even a guarantee. So I think with his hamstring, it was also one of those where they're saying, if they get to the final, he would have played, or if they get to the semifinal. But I don't know. I don't know. It was very hit or miss in that regards. But I think with Egypt, it was just kind of it is kind of an older squad if you really look at it. Like a lot of these
yeah,
guys are like El Neni and Mo Salah, kind of like the 2 main ones. Like they're in their 30s. Like they probably still have another Afcon left in them, but we're kind of seeing that older squad, like a squad that is a little bit older that maybe just don't have as much of the legs as they used to.
yeah. And I think like one of the things that was really I talked about before this tournament for Mo Salah was like he hasn't won an AFCON yet. Like I made it to a point about for Mo Salah about how it was kind of like Egypt viewed him as like second place. Like he wasn't the main guy in Egypt. Like they loved him, they adore him, but
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't like he hasn't won AFCON for it. It's kind of like Messi in Argentina. Like he's done all these great things for club, he hasn't done it for country yet. Even though like getting us our World Cup is great and all that stuff, like he got to win AFCON. Like AFCON is our World Cup, he got to win it. And I think my thing that is most confused is just the way how the whole thing was handled, because it was like Egypt was saying, "Oh, Mo Salah is hurt, but he's going to return." And Liverpool's like, "Well, he's hurt. Let's bring him back to Liverpool to get him evaluated." And then Jurgen Klopp made his statement, and then Mo Salah's agent made his statement, and it was like you had it was kind of like everyone was kind of looking out for themselves, and Mo Salah didn't say anything, so it made it more confusing.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, that was kind of the main thing was everyone, because each of them have a vested interest for that. Like, for Liverpool, it is your best player. You want him healthy, especially now that they are competing for 4 trophies. You need him to come back ready to go, so that he's heard. It's like, you know what, just get fully healthy. Egypt has this tournament that they want to win, so then you have this, and the agent is probably just like, look, I need my guy to be healthy, because if he's healthy, and especially considering every transfer one, I'm sure we're going to hear about Saudi Arabia, like a Saudi club wanting to bring in Mo Salah. It's kind of like he's got to make sure Mo's at his peak as well. So I think and Mo Salah's not really one to go to the media and kind of say like what's going on either. So that doesn't help that case as well. So I think it was everyone looking out for their best interests. At the same time, it's kind of like, because Liverpool were like, oh, he'll train in Liverpool, do his rehab there. If Egypt makes the final, then he'll go over there. It's like, that doesn't make sense. But but then you look at it, it's like, well, it makes sense if he's going to do that, so that better facilities, better state-of-the-art care you're going to have. That's kind of the mindset of it.
Yeah, and I think another
Egypt and Mo Salah have that weird relationship as well. Like, it is kind of just one of those where they expect so much out of him because he is one of the best players in the world. But at the same time, as we see, like, he can only do so much. Like, you can't really expect, like, he can only carry the squad as far as it can go.
Yeah. No, that's true. And you made a good point about how Egypt kind of like they kind of get out of phase. It kind of reminds me of like South Korea as well. Like a lot of their best talent starting to get phased out, and what does that rebuild look like? I think another team that that really disappointed, Ghana. Like, you got Mohamed Kudus, you got all these stars, and the thing is, like, Kudus stock rised in this tournament. Like, from my recollection, he did not play a bad game. Like, the tournament failure was not on him. I think it was more so was on the former manager, which was a weird appointment. But it just seemed like Ghana. Yeah, it was. It was. It just kind of seemed like Ghana was just more or less going through the motions at this point.
Well, it was also just one of those where they had games that they should have won the game against Egypt. That was the one game that they played relatively well and just dropped the ball there. Then they go and have another match, and it's one of those again where it's kind of like, you gotta beat Mozambique. Like, you gotta get that. You need to win that to keep chances alive. And you blow a 2-0 lead with a 91st minute penalty and then a 94th minute equalizer.
Yeah, no,
like, you
crazy.
had it. You had it, and then you let that happen. And the thing is, though, Mozambique outplayed Ghana. But it was just Ghana got the 2 goals that they need that from AU, both penalties. Ironic that he makes the penalties. You had they had it, and that's the thing with Ghana. It was one of those where, like, if they were just they couldn't play a full 90 minutes. It was always just it felt like there was just some disconnect, because against Cape Verde, I think they allowed a stoppage time winner as well.
Yeah.
So it's just like they could not play 90 full minutes.
Yeah. I feel like that's another thing too about this tournament. Like, so many goals happen like after the 85th minute that changed the course of these games. Like, I don't know if it's started, but I feel like Afcon adapted the same rule that the Premier League did, in which if they just accumulate all the stoppages, right? Because normally before, like most games, you get like 3, 4, like 5 minutes was crazy, 6 minutes was wild. And now it's kind of like you're getting adjusted to seeing 10, 11, 12 extra minutes. And a lot of these teams are like bunker back, sitting back. And it's like, yo, y'all do realize y'all got to defend for like another 10 minutes like this, right?
Why do that?
And it's like,
Why do that?
and it's like no one caught on to that point. It was just like, oh, we got to defend? Oh, okay. So another team that, I picked to do well in AFCON, we'll talk about them together. Algeria and Tunisia. I think both To me, these are the two most disappointing teams of Afcon.
I would say Algeria was the most disappointing team of Afcon. If I had to rank, it was Algeria,
Yeah,
Tunisia, then Ghana.
yeah. I would go. I would go Tunisia because I had them going to, like, I thought like it was a good balance squad they could get through. And watching the games, none of that. Like they just looked. I don't know. They did not look like they wanted to be there. Algeria, it looked like a team that needed a refresh, and it just ain't started yet.
I think that's another that I think Algeria is one where it is kind of the same as Egypt, where it's like you have one guy right now in Riyad Mahrez. You're putting a lot on him. You can only do so much. But the thing with Algeria though is there are young players that are very, very good that should be helping. Like
Mhm.
Benacer should be helping out. Like, yes, they have Riyad Mahrez, but it kind of felt like they were relying more on him. But then you have Benacer, you have Hassam R, you have this it's a defender, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Ait Nuri over at Wolves. Like you have guys where you should be better. And I don't know what happened with them. It kind of just felt like things just like the tactics got stale or like
I can tell you what
again, this is
happened. It
another.
was give the ball to Mares, get out the way, and let him do everything. That's literally what it was. Like, and it just it's like teams know that. Like teams know you're gonna give them Mares to do something. Like you gotta have at least a plan B, plan C. Like if you're gonna play counter and defend, you gotta defend.
Yeah. Well, they're another one where it's like they were leading against Angola most of the time, allow a late equalizer. Not as late as some of the other ones, but got the late equalizer. Barely
Yeah.
got through Burkina Faso. They needed a late last, so like a stoppage time equalizer. So it's just another one of those where you kind of look and it's like there's no reason you should have done better. But again, this is Afghan, so that also that logic goes out the window.
Yeah. No, it very much does. And Tunisia, like, what was it? 1 goal scored and 2 goals given up. Like it
Yep.
just lack of bite on attack. They couldn't string good attacks together. They looked just very slow and lethargic. So yeah. The way I had to shift it to a positive though is I think the thing about this AFCON that caught so many people's attention was the amount of lesser known nations that went on like these massive runs or picking up great wins. Like if we start
Mhm.
off in Group A, right? Like Equatorial Guinea is in a group with Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Guinea. Best
Guinea
I can't say
Bissau.
their name. There you go. Guinea Bissau. There we go. All right. And I think like if you would have gave most people like, all right, I want you to pick the winner of this group, they're normally going to pick Nigeria or Ivory Coast, right? No one had Equatorial Guinea especially not with leading the group in goals scored with 9.
And that's the thing. They scored 9 goals, which is
Yeah,
absurd.
put a 4 on Ivory Coast and 4 on Guinea Bissau, and drew with Nigeria. Like that was the thing. We were all like, oh, they're good.
Yeah. That was one where it was like, okay, equalize against Nigeria. It's like, okay, and everyone's like looking at Nigeria like, oh, that's not good enough, Nigeria. Then they score 4 goals against Guinea-Bissau. And again, you're thinking, okay, Guinea-Bissau, not as strong. It's fine. But the
Yeah,
4-0 on Ivory Coast, that was when that was the big eyebrow raiser because it's like, you're doing this to the host nation in a game that the host nation has to win, or at least like they need a positive result to keep
yeah,
at the time we thought to keep their hopes. And the fact that they just went in and just thoroughly outplayed them and just dominated them. That was a big eyebrow raise. And then you even get to the knockouts with Guinea-Bissau and then not Guinea-Bissau, sorry. With I'm thinking wrong Guinea with Equatorial Guinea
it was a lot of guineas. It was a lot of guineas.
and then they just could not seem to find it against Guinea and lose
Yeah.
1-0. Granted, and Guinea scored in the 90th minute.
I feel like that's when the tournament started, all in the 9th minute. Between Cape Verde and Angola, I feel like those two teams Like there's always like a team in a tournament that doesn't win that, but it captures the public's like love
Mhm.
between Cape Verde and Angola. And I was rooting for Angola early. Between those two teams, I think they captured everyone's love, especially like Bebe. Like everyone was like, "Is that Bebe? Like Man United, Bebe?" It's like, yeah, that's him.
I think it was interesting because with Cape Verde, it was another team that was just able to score a lot of goals.
Mhm.
They scored 7 in the group stage, which was and they only allowed 3. So it's not as though they're just playing loose and just high scoring. They were defensively solid. And we even saw in the match against South Africa in the quarterfinal, they created so many chances against South Africa. They
Oh
should
yeah,
have scored at least 2 or 3 goals and they just lost all that clinical edge to them. And I was going to say 9 out of 10 times if they replay that game and everything else happens, they still finish one of those chances. So Cape Verde was definitely a team where they had a style that you just wanted to keep watching because they're creating all these chances. And then with Angola, it was just more of the like a lot of these guys, it's kind of more of the relative unknown. It's not as though like there's not that many players that you're looking at the roster and like, oh, I've heard of this guy. Like I remember this guy. It's kind of like, oh, some play in Turkey, some play in Angola, some play in Portugal, but it's not like they're playing for the top teams in Portugal. So you're looking at the squad and you're like, oh, okay, this guy's doing the work. Like otherwise, it's kind of and that's the beauty of AFCON. It's like you have a country like Angola. And no, they don't have, the top European stars that you have heard of, but they have enough
yeah,
cohesion that it allows the tactics to work.
yes, yeah. I think that's a cool thing. I mean, like the other thing too, like I forgot to point out. And by the way, I got it mixed up. I said Mali was a third place team. I meant Guinea. They were the third place team, not Mali.
Yeah. Guinea barely got through as the third place team as well.
Yeah. The thing I meant to break this up. Equatorial Guinea top goal scorer Emilio Nusi. I want to believe that's true. Is a right back by trade for his club. 34-year-old played for Intercity in Spain. Played striker for Equatorial Guinea. Was the top goal scorer with 5 goals. If that doesn't eclipse all the craziness and wonderfulness of AFCON, I don't know. That's like I don't know. That's like Barbados taking a USL League One center back. You know what? Better example, and you're gonna love this. That's like
I know what
what's
you're
the
gonna
center
say.
back y'all had at Forward Madison?
Josiah Trimmingham, center
Yeah,
back,
that's like
going
that's
up
like
top for
him.
striker.
That's like him going to Trinidad and Tobago. They're like, "Hey, you go play striker," and then he's the top scorer at Afcon. I mean, at Gold Cup.
And the Gold Cup.
It is like, oh my god, yo, can you imagine soccer tournaments collective meltdown if that was to happen?
And
Oh my
if you look at the
god.
top goal scorers for AFCON, it's like you got Nusi again, right back by trade. You got Mustafa Mohammed, where
Yeah.
he plays at Nance now. So like, okay, at least he's got some. At least he's at a club that most people have heard of. You got Gelson Dalla, and then you still got like other than like Adamola Lookman. Again, you're not looking at somebody and like the Bertrand Traore, Adamola Lookman. Now you're starting to see names you recognize, but when you think about it, in terms of 2 goals, Kudus had 2, Jordan Ayew had 2, okay, Frank Kessie had 2, Haller had 2, and then you just look like
Hey,
Mo
he scored the
Salah.
most important goal. That's all that mattered.
I was gonna say he scored the goal that they needed to score.
He
But then you look at
did what he needed to do.
but then you're looking at all these other guys like, okay, Mo Salah had 1 goal, Trezeguet, 1 goal, Sadio Mane, 1 goal, Hakimi, 1 goal. It's just you look up and down, it's like, oh, there's a lot of guys that did not score as many. I think Osimhen only had 1 goal. And you
Yeah.
just sit there like, really? You would think there'd be more, but I don't know.
No, it's hard to explain, but I think like I think the best way how I can explain it was this wasn't a tournament built on stars. You
No.
know, like for prime example, like the Euros, right? I can guarantee you Harry Kane is going to be in the top 5 of goal scorers, right? But that's not the case in Afcon, right? Like, it's not a star thing. Like, the big teams are aren't guaranteed to make it to the round of 16 in this tournament because, like we said, like these teams, these lesser known nations, are knocking off these big nations, right? Like, and also I want to say, like, I think a lot of the craziness from this is coming because this tournament is happening in the middle of the season, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of these guys are coming from Europe. I'm not saying they want to be there, they're not do or don't want to be there, but it's also like, like I could be in London right now. you know, so maybe some of that, but yeah, I think just the upset factor this term, and it's weird because you didn't have that many upsets. If you go look at Asian Cup, you didn't have too much craziness within the groups. Like it's kind of like the groups was like a sleep through, but like
Other than South
the
Korea,
groups,
like South Korea was the one that was South Korea was almost emulating Ivory Coast, and that was that was it.
yeah, and South Korea was creating a lot of their own craziness. But I think the thing about like AFCON that captured so many of our attention was just like every game kind of became must watch because it had its own set of craziness.
Mhm.
Like I can't remember the game, but I can remember it perfectly. The guy who he handballed the ball into the back of the net and celebrated in front of everyone.
And it was shameless celebration. There was
It
not
was
an
shameless. And he swore up and down like,
I think it was Cameroon and Gambia, I think.
oh, I think so. Yes. And the thing that made it so funny was he went to go celebrate with the ref as if like you ain't see that. He like saw and it was just like I'll never forget the motion of this man just stretching his hand out like this, like he just punching it into the back of the net.
I
It's
thought we wouldn't notice.
like,
He really thought that we weren't gonna see that. He really thought that
oh,
VAR was not gonna catch that.
no, but it's like that is the funniest thing in the world, man, to me. Because it's just like I think like that's also another thing that makes this tournament so great is like the passion of it. Like
Mm,
we saw it in the stands. Like to me, watching this, it was a well attended tournament. I can't speak about other AFCONs in the past, but this was one where it was like you kind of felt the atmosphere from like kickoff. Like, oh snap, I see the supporters, I see the fans, like everyone's kind of in and out of it. And even like old players are coming back, like Didier Drogba, Samuel Eto'o. I mean, I know Eto'o got to be there for a reason. But
right.
yeah, like
He gotta be there. You don't got a
he
choice.
got to be there. But no, it was just great to see, all these legends come back and support it and whatnot.
Well, the one thing that I think really stood out to me with this tournament was how well, like, there was no reffing controversy and how VAR was it. This is the thing I always say with VAR. VAR itself is not the problem. It's how it's being used. And you see that in the Premier League where it's just like we
Yeah,
don't understand why they make these decisions despite having this evidence. And in AFCON, that wasn't the case. There was times where they would call a penalty and you were like, that's not a penalty. They would review it. Yes, it's not a penalty. You look at the handball, it's blatant. They thankfully got that call correct, but like there wasn't any refereeing controversy, which I think is that's huge because then it takes out that view of okay, this like there's that bias of corruption. That it takes out that the standard refereeing in Africa is viewed as lower. I think that was one of the most important things to me with this tournament as
yeah.
well is there was no refereeing controversy, which seems to happen in every other tournament. It didn't happen in AFCON, where there are calls that
No,
maybe you could say, that probably wasn't the right one. Sure. But there wasn't anything that was like, no, this is blatant. This is a blatant blown call kind of thing.
right. It's kind of almost for listeners who are probably listening to this 30 years ago. You're probably, I mean, 30 years from now, you're gonna be like, "What? What is he talking about the Super Bowl?" Well, like the Super Bowl between Kansas City and San Diego, Kansas City and San Francisco. it was like it was a game in which it was good, but I'm never gonna think about like the ref making a call to change the decision of one way or another.
Yeah.
Like the ref didn't make it about himself. Where we've seen before, VAR used in other countries, it becomes about the ref and his decision, and oh, we lost because of this. Like, no, you lost because you couldn't defend in the 15 minute. You gave up a crap goal. That's
You
why
lost
you
because you couldn't
lost.
make a penalty.
Right. That's why you lost, not because of a hard decision. But yeah, that's the group stage. Now we get to like the knockout stage, and I swear, man, I think this is part of the reason why I don't bet on sports because this is why I don't bet. Morocco, I had them get into the semifinals. They get knocked out by South Africa. They act like they couldn't know how to attack. Senegal get knocked out in round of 16 to Ivory Coast, who shouldn't have been there, fired their coach a couple of days before. It's like, okay, this is weird. Egypt gets knocked out on penalties and they look capitulated. And then Equatorial Guinea, the team that got that golden boot winner, gets knocked out. And I'm just like,
And doesn't score a goal.
no. And I'm just like, every team who I thought was going to do it or who I picked to do it doesn't.
And that's why I said DR Congo, they were my sleeper pick. I think they can do something. And they got to the semifinal. And you know what? I was very happy that they did that. But everything else was kind of like, okay, I wouldn't have expected, if you had told me, okay, the semifinal is going to be Nigeria, South Africa, Ivory Coast, and DR Congo, I would have been like, okay, how did we get here? Did Nigeria knock out a big team? They knocked out Cameroon. Okay, cool. What happened to Egypt? What happened? It's like, no, Egypt lost to DR Congo. South Africa loses. South Africa knocked out Morocco. Okay, not expecting that. And then you're just like, oh, what about Ghana and Cam? Like, what about Ghana? Ghana doesn't get out of the group stage. Oh, Algeria doesn't get out of the group stage. And that was the fun thing with the knockouts. It was kind of like you had two big matchups in Nigeria and Cameroon, and then Senegal and Ivory Coast. Like those were ones where most people would view it as, okay, they're pretty balanced. And then all the other ones, it's kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen. You can tell me this team wins and I'll believe you.
Yeah. Like there was like, what was it? Angola and Namibia. And I'm like, all right, Angola got a chance. They went 3-0 and they're playing against Nigeria. And I'm like, all right, Angola's going to do this. Learn a hold. Nigeria to me is the team where I was like, oh, they're not making it out of the group. Like they're gonna crack. They who I thought Ghana was gonna be. Like they were. I thought Ghana was gonna be like. I mean, I thought Nigeria was gonna be it, and they figured out like, oh, if we play defense, we can make a run. Lo and behold, they do that. All the way to the final, into the last couple of minutes, where Ivory Coast, man, I don't think. Me personally, I don't think we will ever see another run again. Oh, I won't say we'll never see it.
I was going to say, with Afcon, no, I don't believe that.
Anything can happen. But it is highly unlikely that we will see a host nation who finished third in their group go all the way to the final and win. And honestly, I will say this. I think this is the saving grace for Afcon and Ivory Coast because really there's a whole different parallel where if Ivory Coast gets to the final, doesn't get out of the group stage, right? Like say if they don't win a game, say if they draw their first game, it Ghana goes through instead of Ivory Coast. The attendance for Afcon can just
plummet.
And it looks bad. And then you have all these stupid pundits making all these talking points about it, right? Just negating the fact that the host country's out. I think it worked out great for the organizer of AFCON. Ivory Coast goes on this run and plays another big power in Nigeria. Like they get everything they wanted and more. They got the small nations. I mean, I'm some say small nations. The lesser known nations going these amazing runs and capture the attention of everyone. The big teams kind of fall away to the wayside, so that kind of hooks on the media and like what's going on with that. And then they get the final of a big power in Nigeria and Ivory Coast, the host nation, playing each other, and it works out perfectly.
And again, like I mentioned, Ivory Coast doesn't look good the whole time. And then they get to the final, and it was all of a sudden like, where was this team the whole tournament? Like, they are dominating possession. They are putting in shots left, right, and center. They look very well organized. Where was this team the whole tournament? Just out of nowhere.
Like, I remember sitting there and I was just like, how did, like, I really thought once Nigeria scored, I was like, okay, Nigeria is now is going to settle in. Osman is going to get a second goal. Nigeria is going to ride us off. And look, I will say this. Anaman Lookman, when he started off at Everton, there was a lot of problems. I remember he went to RB Leipzig, and then he came back. I want to say he went to Turkey. I think there was a Turkey center there.
No, he went to
I
Fulham.
know he's okay. Fulham, that's what it was. I was thinking about Besiktas, but it's Fulham. And now I know he's at Atalanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's doing well there.
He is, but like his stock, like I can make a legitimate. He was the best player of the tournament. He was that guy. Like, to me, he should have been the player of the tournament because so many of Nigeria's best moments came from just him creating and just like even I remember Osman had a goal that was scored, but it got called back because I think Osman was outside or something. There might have been a foul in the play. But Osman has like a pass, and it's like it's Kevin De Bruyne-esque. Like the ball kind of like evades 2-3 defenders. And I remember he's in the right hand space and he's driving down his lane and he sees Osman in the left hand space kind of like drifting. So he whips his ball. And the only way how this ball is going to get past the center back and the left back is if it's low, but it curves.
Mm-hmm.
But it curves at that right moment where the goalkeeper doesn't come out and he hits that pass. And it's like the only other player I know that can hit that pass right now in this game is Kevin De Bruyne. And he hit that pass perfectly. And that's, I think he should have been playing the tournament. But
well, I was going to say one of the things you mentioned with Nigeria is they did look so defensively organized, and a lot of that was because of their captain, William Truce Ikong. So he was picked as the player of the tournament. I think that's the fair one because he had that Nigerian back line very organized. He had scored in he scored in the final. He almost like was able to get that crowning achievement as well. But I think that's probably why he got the player of the tournament, just because of how organized that back line was for Nigeria and how he was the one that kept it all together. And I mean, he seemed to be everywhere most of the matches. So I definitely understand with Lookman, but I think with Drew Sekong, it made sense that he got it just because his impact was kind of one of those where, if you take him out, I don't think, Nigeria doesn't get this far.
Oh, no, probably not at all. I mean, to me, honestly, like we were saying it all day, but like the biggest talking point for me about Afcon is there is a lot of talent in Africa that I think unfairly goes unrecognized because a lot of people aren't familiar with it, and it truly is hard to watch. And if you don't have eyes on it, you kind of just make generalizations. And Afcon's a way to kind of see this talent and be like, oh, something like there's some really skillful players. And to be honest with you, man, maybe not at the top elite level of like European football, right? But if you're a USL owner or MLS owner or like in Austria or Switzerland or like the lower levels of France, I would look at some of these players here, man, and be like, yo, there's some cheap talent down there we can get and, get some good play out of it.
Well, and I was going to say, one of the things, like, I feel like France is one of the few nations that really does look at Africa and bring in talent. I feel like France is kind of the main one that does it. I think Portugal does for certain nations, when just because of that Portuguese aspect. So I know like Cape Verde and Angola, they're probably going to get more. Like the Portuguese leagues are probably going to look more because it's also an easier language because they speak Portuguese over there. So I think for that would make sense. Equatorial Guinea, probably the same thing with Spain. Like I think a lot of these lower leagues in Spain, in England, in France, they could be doing more. And especially with England, you would think like there's enough players that were born in England that have Nigerian parents that you can look and be like, okay, and then you don't have to deal with work permits. So
Yeah.
I think it is one of those where I think just because it's a little bit tougher because you have obviously you have work permit rules and non-EU restrictions, but that's why I think like the Netherlands and France where the work permits and the registration rules to get on the roster are less strict. I think that's why it would be beneficial for them. And I think there's definitely a club somewhere in Scandinavia. I think it was in Denmark where they have like a partnership with like an and like
FC
academy.
Neuseeland, who, matter
Yeah,
of fact, are part owners of San Diego FC Chrome, RoboCop FC.
there we
Yeah.
go. So yeah, but like maybe we'll start seeing more of that. There's Generation Foot over in Senegal, and they're able to kind of produce all these players and get them overseas as well. So I think that is going to be something that increases because there is talent in this tournament. Like there are talented players that just haven't gotten the opportunity or just aren't getting noticed, whether it's bias, whether it's scouting, budget, whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, man. I think this is a good way to put a bow on Afcon. I mean, it was a fantastic tournament,
Mm-hmm.
fun all around. Like, I don't think there was a bad game on TV. You know how usually some tournaments there's like a game where you're like, all right, I don't need to watch this. Um, but
I don't
even in the games,
know that Group B finale, South Africa, Tunisia, and
yeah,
Namibia, and
yeah.
Mali. Those are pretty bad 0-0s. Like there are
Yeah,
definitely some matches where I was like, I don't know about this.
the funny thing is, I think those were the only nil-nils up until that point of the group stage.
I think DR Congo had one as well. I just don't remember against who.
Yeah, I think if I heard the stat right, I
I
definitely
think DR Congo
think
and had what I had a 0-0 in the group stage. I just can't remember. But there wasn't that many 0-0s. I think
no, it wasn't.
I think there was maybe like 3 or 4 total.
Yeah. But even so, that's still like good entertainment number.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. What are your lasting thoughts or impressions about Afcon this year?
I think it's one of those again, it's one of those tournaments where it's enjoyable to watch because there is the uncertainty, there is the unpredictability, there's a lot of talent as well. And I think the next one is going to be in Morocco. So that's another one where that could be very well attended. And I think it's just like the overall aspect of not only the players, but the coaches, the fans, media, they're all genuine. And you see that culture right at the forefront, which is pretty great to see as well. Compared, not to say like the Euros and, Copa don't have it, but it's just not the same that you see when you watch the crowds in AFCON.
Yeah. Well, it's like with Copa and Euros, it's like you expect the big teams to get through,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it would be shocking if they don't. Like, it would be really shocking. But there's just also like a money disparity and talent disparity. Whereas like in AFCON, you gotta walk into it, you really don't know. But it feel like I would say out of all the international competitions, it feels like it is the most balanced from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Like
There's
still
gonna be another potential Cinderella that we just don't know about.
yeah, like there is a disparity, between talent, right? But it feels like it is the most balanced between like the tops and the bottoms. Yeah. Um. Yeah, Kyle. Thanks for doing this podcast with me, dude.
No problem. I'm glad to be on. Of course, I'm glad to talk about AFCON. And again, if you're not watching it, you need to get on that next year.
Yeah. Also, by the way, like not for those who probably know, beIN Sports also does the African Champions League. So if you're looking for more African soccer to watch that. Like that's also a pretty cool tournament. I think I watched it last year. I think I watched Wyatt, what was it? Raja Redad? A club in Morocco. They were in CONCACAF. I mean, not CONCACAF. I keep saying CONCACAF. CAF Champions League, and it was pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. So with that being said, listeners, make sure you check out our Instagram post, our Twitter post as we do our Black History post this month. You know, we do it once a year. We've been doing it for the last 4 years. So this month, this time this year, we're focusing on Afcon. So like some of the cool moments, the players, the coaches, that's teams that played in men's and women's Afcon because we want to highlight both. Um, Also, make sure you check out our website tomorrow because my friend Kyle over here wrote an amazing article that will be coming out shortly. So make sure you check that out. And with that being said, just make sure you keep in touch with the socials. That's about it. Anything else from you, Kyle?
Nope. I just appreciate being on, and just make sure to continue following Can I Kick It FC and also any other well-run Black podcast content in general.
Yeah. And don't steal other people's content. It's not cool. Well, don't steal it. But yeah, just
Do your research.
Google.
Do your research. A Google search will save you a lot of trouble.
Yeah. That's about it. Until next time, listeners, I'm about to go to sleep. I'm tired. Holla.
Sure.